Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about dry brush technique in watercolor, and specifically for painting trees and bushes. So first of all, for those of you who doesn't know about dry brush technique, it's basically when you have when your brush doesn't have so much water on it and more pigment, and you have a thicker consistency of the paint, and then your your brush is having a bit of a friction with the paper, and then it doesn't result in a flat wash, but rather than a bit of a texture feeling to it. This usually works works best on cold pressed paper or rough paper. Doesn't usually work well on hot press because it's very smooth, so you need the papers that have a bit of a texture to it in order for it to work. Regarding the brushes, you can use any brushes you have, medium size or big. I just don't recommend using any kind of mop brushes. Any brushes that loads a lot of water like this, for example, might not be very easy to use, or these kind of, yeah, all these kind of mop brushes usually hold a lot of water. But any kind of other brushes you have will work. Even something pointy and springy like this will also work. So you can try with whatever brushes you have. You don't need anything special for this to work. So in general, as I said, you need a bit of a creamy mixture or creamy consistency. So here I'm using, let's say, I'm just for testing purpose, I'm just mixing a bit of cobalt blue here. This is the consistency you are looking for, like something like this, not something very watery, and might even be a bit, yeah, something like this would work well. So usually how I do this is I'm holding the brush like a bit horizontal to the paper, and then very lightly when you push you get this effects. This is basically the dry brushing. I'm very lightly touching the paper, I'm not really pushing it, and I'm just letting it leave these edges. This is useful for a lot of use cases in watercolor in general. The most use I use it for is painting trees, which I will show you later. But it's useful in a lot of things. Let's say you have a building or a wall or something, and you want to, or even a rooftop of a cottage or a building, and you want to add a bit of texture to it. You can always come later with some pigment and then just scrap a bit to add some, like some texture to it. Or let's say you have a field with grass and stuff, and then with your green color you might just want to, like add randomly something like this, which adds a bit of texture to grass or something like this. So now for trees, I usually don't draw trees when I'm using this technique. I like to leave it to be random in general, but feel free to draw your trees if you want. Just for this demo purpose, I will just lightly outline a tree, something very rough, and not sure if you can see this. Yeah, just very lightly the edges, so you know where you're working in. And I'm gonna assume that we have light coming from here, so basically most of these parts will also be in shadows, and of course there's going to be a bit of shadows in between in general for the tree. So when doing this with trees, I would recommend that you mix both your values, make them ready, because you want to work a bit faster so that the colors blend together. So here I have light green mixed and a bit dark green mixed, so I can use them both, and this basically both of them are in the consistency I was talking about. So I'm loading my brush here, and then I'm going to come here on the lighter area, and I'm just randomly going to don't fill everything, because this is the main point why this is good for trees, is you have these empty spaces, because trees usually have these gaps. They are not solid, unless of course there's other trees in the back, but you will decide based on your scene or your reference. And then once I start coming here, I immediately load my other darker color, and then I continue. You can also come and just add a bit of these darks somewhere, because the tree is not all consistent in colors. There's going to be shadow areas also in the middle. And that's it. For the tree itself, I usually try to be fast in general, and while it's still drying, I usually try to paint my trunks and things so they also blend while the colors are still wet. So I usually come with brown or sepia or whatever color you're using, and then just pull trunks out here to the bottom, depend on your shape of your tree, and just add some trunks in the middle, let them blend. And that's basically how I use dry brushing for trees. It saves a lot of time, and I like the dynamic movement that gives to the tree, and it takes very little time. Of course, you will need to practice this a bit until you get the hold of it, but you can try it on separately like this until you figure out how it works with specific brushes you have, your colors, practice a bit on mixing the correct consistencies that you like. I usually also use the same technique usually at the bottom, like also to add some grass or whatever the bottom of the tree. Also, if the trunk is still wet, it just kind of blend in, which gives a very nice effect instead of the tree just popping out of the ground. Something like this. And as I showed now, this can also be used for bushes. So basically you can, let's say you have bushes somewhere, or even distant trees, like if you have trees in the distance, not something standing like this, it also works very well. So for bushes, I always also use the same thing. Let's say this is the ground, and I just go on and basically I'm scrubbing against the paper. And it gives you this very nice random feel. And then I also get my colors, and here I'm not really dry brushing anything, I'm just dropping some dark especially at the bottom, because it will be darker at the bottom. Just some something like this. At the bottom here I'm not really doing any dry brushing, I'm just trying to give it a bit of a darker bottom. Now the most important with this technique is this this effect here on the top. This is what you're looking for bushes or grass or something like this. Of course, if you're doing this, you have to make sure that your previous layer have dried, because if you're painting the tree, most probably you already have skies and ground and stuff like this. So you have to make sure that it's completely dry before doing this, otherwise the paper will be a bit wet and then it will not give you the exact effect like this. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching and I hope you enjoyed, and see you next time. Bye.